Let's talk. Let's talk. I haven't did a talk video in a while. I want to make an argument. And I know that a lot of people are going to disagree with me with this particular argument. Nevertheless, I do think I'm right on this. It's about Cenk Uygur. I have watched in the wings this fight that has been taking place on what is called the progressive left, where Uygur and TYT effectively resides. I mean, in many respects, you could say CYT started this kind of ecosystem of the left with TYT. I mean, for God's sake, they've been around for like 12 years, if not longer. And Uygur recently, after the loss of Kamala Harris, came out, if I remember correctly, said something to the effect about trans kids, how he wasn't for it. And the left freaked out. Uygur and Anna started going on right-wing networks. In fact, the most recent one was appearing on stage with Charlie Kirk. And the left, progressive left, flipped out. I watched that, and when it first came out, I said to myself, well, he's right about the trans kids thing. I mean, the idea that you're going to have a child who is not even legally allowed to drink or drive a car to be able to mutilate themselves for life is outrageous. And it's purely ideological. Okay, well, from a left progressive point of view, okay, that's outrageous. You can't say that. That's transphobic, etc. And that kind of gets to some of the problem and some of the thing that I think Uygur is trying to deal with and resolve that he is getting shit on immensely for. I would go further. What Uygur has been doing and the response by progressives makes his point. It makes his point that much stronger. The reason why I no longer call myself a progressive is because, for all intents and purposes, I'm an economic lefty. And a lot of the things that these guys push, and a lot of these guys, things that they push where they need this kind of ideological allegiance to, I just don't buy. I believed that it was a cult. And because I believed on some level it was a cult, I didn't necessarily see eye to eye. I felt like a lone wolf, a coyote, just kind of out there like Batman in the wings, looking at the stuff that takes place but not really a part of it. I'm an economic lefty that focuses on various issues and will give my point of view on those issues. But it's not tethered to any particular political party. It's tethered to what I think is in the best interest of Americans, people in general, from a humanitarian point of view. But if you get more specific, especially in the context of the country, what is in the best interest of Americans? And much of the things that take place in regards to policy from the West are not. They just aren't. If I'm on the left, I'm supposed to believe in the Ukraine war. I don't. Like, it's issue after issue after issue. So I've watched Uygur take the hit on this as he's been trying to kind of, it's not even a pivot. He hasn't necessarily changed policy or anything else. What it seems, and again, I will give my take to allow people to come in and people can give me their take. I'll even wait for a while and take the comments as they come out. I can't see how he's wrong. So Uyghur's argument, for all intents and purposes, is we lost a race where 8 million people decided to just say, screw it, they didn't come out. That those people either felt alienated or ostracized by the Democratic Party for how they were as Americans. Because keep in mind, most Americans are not ideologically pure. Most Americans have point of views that kind of, go to the left and to the right. They just are who they are. They're just making their way, and they have certain points of view. Now, the reality of it is, the left has this thing about ideological purity. I watched on CNN where one of the hosts pointed out about boys playing in girls' sports, and the other guests flipped out, red-eyed, screaming, because he couldn't necessarily tolerate somebody pointing out that a biological male is in a woman's sport. Just astonishing stuff. Most Americans wouldn't do that because most Americans are not ideologically pure in that way where you need to toe a very specific line. Uygur comes out and says, why did we lose this race? And is it possible that we lost this race because certain things within the context of ideological purity just is an aberration for Americans, meaning they look at it and fully disagree with it. And because they fully disagree with it, they can't necessarily see themselves having a place what is typically considered on the left. And he pointed out the issue for trans and the reaction that he got for making that video on trans kids. And you can say the same thing about trans in sports, where or this notion that I have to, in my mind, meaning not even defend the rights and everything else to ensure that every trans person lives a decent life like every other American will live a decent life, and defend that completely. But in my mind, I have to fully believe that a man who was born as a man with an XY chromosome transitioned into a woman, that that person is a woman indistinguishable from all other women. You're out of your mind. And if you need people to believe that, most Americans are going to think you're out of your mind. That's not transphobic. That is just reality and just scientific data of that person having an XY chromosome. I guess my point is, this is kind of the stuff that is developed on the left, that when Uygur points that out, people flip out. Now, he went on that stage and they started doing right-wing media, not because they were changing their own politics. They came to the conclusion that is it possible that there are people on the right that felt alienated by the Democratic Party, but still has a populist streak in them, meaning there's a populist lefty waiting to come out of somebody in that group that might have seen the Democratic Party in a certain light, and so they didn't necessarily see themselves in that party. Is it possible? To any degree, is it possible? And if so, what is that percentage? And how do I get those people in order to inflate the numbers of people who are in my corner, who are in my web of people in a political sense? That was his point. The left doesn't care about that. They flipped out. From my point of view, you should be trying to get as many people in your wheelhouse as you possibly can. That's how you win elections. That's how you change things. That's how you get movements. I don't need everybody to agree with me on each and every item. I need people to agree with me on main points that we can move forward on. And that's his point. But somehow that point is fundamentally missed. And the only argument that keeps coming out about Uygur is, well, you are moving to the right as a grift. You're moving to the right because, you're going back to your roots. You're moving to the right for some other particular reason. And you are giving legitimacy to these right-wing platforms when you go on these right-wing platforms, despite the fact that you're not necessarily saying or doing anything that is changing your own politics. Uygur's point of view is, I'm trying to get as many people in my tent as I possibly can get. And I believe that there's a percentage of Trumpers who are populists, who are, let's say, maybe right-wing populists, but populists nonetheless. When J.D. Vance goes out and gives a speech like this speech could have been given by Bernie Sanders. No BS.
I want to talk about the future, and I want to talk about what President Trump and Vice President Vance's ticket will mean for the American people, who we're going to fight for, and how exactly we're going to do it. So let's start with who we're going to fight for. Number one, we're going to fight for every single worker in this country. If you work hard and play by the rules, you ought to be able to put a good dinner on the table and send your kids to whatever vacation and whatever school you want to. Work hard and play by the rules, you get a good life. It's that simple.
Bernie Sanders could have said that, and I'm pretty sure Bernie Sanders has said that. Now, does he believe it? Doesn't matter. He said it, and you get various elements of MAGA that does believe it. And because they believe it, voted for Trump. You got Kamala Harris running around the country with Liz Cheney. Liz effing Cheney, of no less. And understand the reason that Kamala Harris ran with Liz Cheney is because she wanted to replace the left with the right. Meaning, she was hoping that Liz Cheney would be able to get Republicans that are what's the word I'm looking for? Not disenfranchised, but that are dissatisfied with Trump, that hate Trump, that don't like Trump, and that get those Republicans to join in with the Democrats to replace elements of the left. This was the same thing that Chuck Schumer said one day when he was pointing out that we can get, for every lefty, we could get a right-winger to replace that lefty. And Democrats had no issue. At the least, they never said anything that they had an issue with it. Kamala Harris doing that. And more to the point, Democrats that would have been replaced by Republicans under this model that Kamala Harris was going with defended Kamala Harris as she tried to replace them. We're not talking about that. We're talking about something different where a person is trying to increase his tent by reaching the people that he believes he can reach, that believes exactly what J.D. Vance just said there about fighting for workers. Again, do they believe it from the standpoint of the Trump team? Absolutely not. They're going to increase taxes. They're going to have more laws that are going to hurt, let's say, unions and those type of things. But does the Trump voter who's listening to it believe it? Yes. Now, again, I get it. My audience does not like Cenk Uygur. And I have not watched TYT for over a decade, if not longer. Every so often, a video of something like this will pop up. And I started seeing this in my feed where he would have these interviews or these debates, or he would go on these channels. And the reaction by the cultish left would just be outrage. Now, when Bernie Sanders went on Fox News, that outrage wasn't there. Or for that matter, when the Teamsters, the president, I can't think of his name right now, when he went on to CPAC, I believe it was CPAC or the Republican National Convention, I believe it was RNC convention. There was no outrage because it was right for them to do it. Because all things being equal, when somebody is talking to you, there's a friend or foe mechanism that kicks into place. And when you're listening to it, people who you distrust, you don't like, there's this kind of filter that takes it all with suspicion. It may be true, but it's taken with suspicion. If it's somebody that you like or neutral towards, you give it far more openness to what is being said. The objective that Uygur seems to be trying to reach is not necessarily to pivot his own politics. It's more so to try to reach people who are not in the bubble that is typically considered the left. And he's trying to reach those people, hopes being there's a percentage, even if it's 15%, that will say, that guy's right. I agree with that guy. I don't agree with him on everything, but I agree with that guy. And is at the very least open to having some kind of, let's say, thoughts about the things that are putting down from the perspective of the left in a way that they would never get it under normal circumstances listening to a Charlie Kirk or some of these other right-wingers that espouse whatever they espouse. I hope you understand what I'm saying. The issue that I'm having with this is the response by the left where they're attacking him for doing something that is fundamentally trying to expand their own tent. It's weird. But from their point of view, you're legitimizing all of these other right-wing figures. This is a bad thing. This is a bad thing. I watched the interview or the debate between Cenk Uygur and Mark Lamont. And immediately you see reaction videos afterward. Mark Lamont destroys Cenk Uygur. Okay, that didn't happen in that interview. It was a back and forth interview. And Uygur made the very point that I'm making now. My objective is to expand the reach of lefty ideas. And even at one point pointed out, Lamont, dude, you're in a bubble. And I'm trying to go beyond that bubble to get various people who you think are racist, sexist, and bigoted that are potentially lefties, but may not know they're lefties for various, let's say, cultural, potentially even ideological reasons that they feel that the left is the Democratic Party when it's not really the case. Mark Lamont points out that there are two right-wing parties in this country. Again, no issue, agreed. And within the context of two right-wing parties in this country, that the people who are listening to Uygur are only agreeing with stuff when it hits, let's say, certain notes. Again, I think that's short-sighted. I had a guy, and the reason why I come to this point of view, I had a guy send me an email a few years ago, and he said, dude, he said, I used to be a troll on your channel. And he said, I used to be there just to be a troll. And he says, I realized after a while that like 6-7 months had passed, and I've listened to you every day. He says, I'm a hardcore right-winger. He says, so it shocks me that I'm writing this email. He says, 70% of what you say I agree with. He said, but he says, I enjoy your content, man. Keep it up. That guy didn't know he was a right-winger. I mean, and I thought to myself, you're not a right-winger if you enjoy my channel. There may be things that I hit that trend either way, and I guess I consider myself this person who is not necessarily entirely ideological, yeah, but I'm honest in my appraisal of things that come up, and I try to hit issues and go with the point of view by my own ideological framing on those issues, within the context of trying to be honest. And that was something that he hadn't gotten before and that he agreed with. So, a guy who, under normal circumstances, if I said anything to him, just on this basis of being a progressive soapbox, would have been filtered in this everything said with suspicion. Now gets an openness to whatever dialogue I'm putting out, where he may agree or disagree with, but at the very least, he's open to it. How is that different than what Uygur is doing? It's that part. Now I get it. Sam Cedars of the world and the Vigilants of the world, the other randos of the world that are populating the progressive left, from their point of view, a member of the cult is trying to leave. And like all cults, we don't like members of the cult to leave. In which case, you get hysteria. You get absolutely hysteria. So, that is my point of view. I'm going to give the audience their chance to give their take. I don't know how many people are going to be here. What, they're 102. All right. I'm going to let you give your take. What do you think? What do you think? Let's see. Oh, amen. Okay, let's do that. Damon Trader. There is no left. There's only waged and owners of a capitalist class. Fair enough. But, you know, that is still on a political spectrum. It's not like, you know, political structure is this esoteric thing. Can't necessarily get off it. Let's say Tim Emerson. There is no left. There is top and bottom. Okay, fair enough. This is Tinkerbar. Cenk is looking at his own age, viewance, and the next 4 years. I disagree. I am not taking this in the most cynical point of view. And the reason I'm not taking this in the most cynical point of view is because he hasn't really deviated. If you listen to what Cenk used to talk about, this notion of fighting the establishment, that the issue is the way things are ordered, and we need to have this united front against that. That hasn't changed. In fact, the arguments that he was making even there, meaning at the Charlie Kirk thing, was about established order, and the way things are. And he was trying to get applause based on that particular framing of the argument. I guess my point is, what is the issue if your objective is to increase your reach by being open to going on various platforms, make your argument on those platforms? I don't see how that's wrong. Typically, they call that a debate, an exchange of ideas, a willingness to have a conversation with people that you vehemently disagree with on various issues. And this is not about everything said is going to be agreed upon. It's not that. It's not even about changing the mind of the host on that show. That is never going to happen. Those people have fiscal responsibility to be who they are. The issue is audience. It's the audience. It's the audience. It's the, you know, if you have a host that is pulling in 200,000 people, and for the first time they're hearing these kind of lefty ideas put in a way that is not necessarily attacking people on the right, you may be open to that. Especially if you do that on network after network after network. The attempt is, yes, expand your viewership, but more so to expand your base. It's that part. It's that part. The left don't seem to know to get that. He got mad, and now he's saying Cenk is right. Wow. I didn't get mad. Mad about what? Gunman. What? Mad about what? I'm saying he's right about this issue. You should be trying to increase your base. You should be trying to increase your base. It seems rational to me. Look, you can hate this point of view. You can downvote this video. God bless you. Here's another one. Anyways, why is America the only Western country not to subsidize education? Yes. And its citizenry in France, you can get a bachelor's degree for $500 a year. God, yes. Yes. All that's true. All of that's true. The Canadian Conservative Party is a lot more left. Look, there is no left-wing party in America. There's a party that calls itself the left wing. There is no left wing party in America. Typically, they say movements is the thing that changed that. But up to this point, we haven't seen it. I haven't listened to Cenk in years. Maggie, I haven't either. It just keeps popping up in my feed on Twitter over and over and over again. Cenk said this, Cenk said that. And typically it's the left or progressives with a huge amount of scorn, meaning the likes of Sam Cedar, the likes of these people. What's wild about it is, look, put your point of view of Cenk to the side for the moment. Because I get it. People don't like Cenk Uygur. For me, this is less about Cenk, and it is more about this idea of having a wider front that is aimed at what seems to be a problem as opposed to be aimed at each other. And if it's true that you end up with a certain percentage of people who ended up on the right, but on the populist right, where rhetoric about jobs, employment, things that are in the best interest of America, that they are willing to listen to and even agree with, then you've been able to expand your tent in a way that would have been impossible if you weren't willing to have a conversation with the other side. Now, for Democrats, that is just unheard of. And if you remember from the moment when Kamala Harris was supposed to go on Joe Rogan and they scrapped it, saying, no, I'm not going to do that. Okay, well, that's a mistake. Joe Rogan has this massive audience of the very people that you need and want to vote for you. And whereas most of them are not going to listen to you, there may be a percentage that will. And I'm saying this is true in general, and I'm saying this is true across the board. I'm missing why it's a bad thing to go on right-wing networks to have conversations with those people, especially if you're not necessarily abandoning your own ideas of things. I miss how that's wrong. And again, I guess part of my feeling on this is I do the same thing. I have right-wingers on my network. I used to get in fights with right-wingers all the time on my radio station. It was part of our show. We didn't have this kind of sandbox where you only had conversations with people that you agreed with. From our point of view, you had conversations with both because there were honestly things that I just didn't know because those weren't things that weren't necessarily talked about on the left or points of view that weren't talked about on the left. It expands your horizon, it expands your point of view. But the goal of it isn't necessarily to move your show to the right. The goal more so is, can I reach more people? Are there people who are on the right that may be open to my point of view of things, that have never heard my point of view of things, but if given my point of view, may agree? That seems to be his basic argument. And if that is indeed his basic argument, I think his basic argument is right. You can hate me for that, but I do think it's true. OBE, out of body experience direct. Leadership wears the same uniforms worn in that film. Fair enough, OBE. Maggie Smith, lies and no substance to ammo and Cenk's argument. All kinds of reason not to waste my time when I could listen to Jamal. Thank you, Maggie. This is in no way telling people to go listen to Cenk. This video is not that. This video is more so pointing out that the argument that he's making is not wrong. And by the way, I would say the same thing if it was somebody on the right who was saying that they were trying to talk to people on the left. Look, man, we have a problem in this country. And there is no way to solve that problem. A lot of that stuff is stupid government. The idiots who get involved in our government who care more about maximizing the profit of corporations, or for that matter themselves, especially enriching themselves when they get out of government. These people don't care about us. And I don't really believe that Americans believe that the people who are empowered care about us. And if that's true, then how do you get something different short of some kind of movement? And are you really going to get a movement that is purely of progressives and progressive ideas? Or are you going to be able to expand that to speak to, let's say, workers, where you get the majority of the country to back your point of view? And yes, some of those workers will be further to the right than the people on the left will be comfortable with. But they would still have the same priorities of wanting to feed their kids, wanting to make sure they have a home, or for that matter, a car to drive, or basic decent life. It's that. Now, you can believe that everybody who backs MAGA is racist, sexist, bigoted, etc. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I just don't. I have met people who are hardcore right wingers who were none of those things. They may trend in a particular direction that I may be uncomfortable with. Fair enough. But that's based on my own, subjective view of things and what I'm accustomed to. Do they care about their kids? Yes. Do they care about paying their house note? Yes. Are they racist? No. Do they say things that may trend that way? Yes, because of the people who they hang around and what they're accustomed to. I guess the point I'm making here is you may be able to reach some of those, even if it's 10%. 75 million people voted for Trump. 10% of that is still an astonishing number. What? We're at 77 million people. That is not nothing in an election that the difference was only like 1 million votes. He's not wrong. Yes, he's fighting for Democrats, so fair enough. But I'm pointing out what he's doing, not, how can I say this? Not this notion of how can we Democrats in office. It's not that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking very specifically about this change in tenor that he's getting hit for. He's not wrong on it, especially in context of what he's trying to accomplish. Andrew Dwyer. It's convenient position for a podcaster to have for them expand their viewership. Yes, that is not a strategic way to make new change. It kind of depends. I mean, the federal government took my channel down. And yes, I completely bitch about that because I'm still stunned by that. Government is usually this esoteric thing in the background, this etheric thought that is made up of people and everything else, but ultimately it's an organization that is a mental thing. To have that thing reach his hand out in order to take food off my plate and end my job is astonishing. The question becomes, Dwyer, and this is specific to that point, why did they do it? If it is a podcaster's job and objective to get viewership, which it is, and assuming for the moment that I'm a podcaster and I'm working on a radio station, podcaster, you're doing effectively very similar things, if not the same, in spirit. Why does the government take my job down or take my job away, destroy the company, the network, if indeed that it's just podcasting and viewership, just viewership? They did it because there's an element of government and policy in media that your ability to govern on some level can be hindered or forward by the media that you get. And if you get millions of people to believe and trust in something that you're saying, that's called a movement. Now, I'm not saying Uygur is making a movement. I am saying that Uygur increasing his viewership is also increasing a body of ideas that are pressing on the political space in a way that the political space may not like, depending on who's in office, or may like, depending on who's in office. It's not just viewership. That's my point. If it was just viewership, I would still have a radio show. Just saying. Just saying. We should be trying to reach people who haven't picked a side. MAGA are too far gone. So all of them are too far gone. Every last one of them are too far gone. 30% of the people that voted for Trump voted for Obama. Okay, Democrats never really explained that. They never really even engaged that. They don't even deal with that point. But it's true. 30% of the people that voted for Trump voted for Obama. Those people didn't get the hope and change that they wanted. They went from a black man to a white guy. You can't tell me that all of these people were racist, sexist, and bigoted. And the fact that Trump increased the number of people that he was voting for, that voted for him, to 5 million from 74 million means that he retained the people who voted for him the first time around and increased that number by 1 million votes. If those people are too far gone, then why did they vote for Obama 4 years prior? Why? Why did they do that? I agree with you that there's going to be a percentage that are hardcore MAGA. There's going to be a percentage that are racist, sexist, bigoted, all that stuff. There's going to be a percentage that want smaller government and want the, screw over the people that need government. All of that's true. But it's really 100%. Under normal circumstances, you have things on like a graph. And in the context of the graph, you get some people who are heavy involved. You get some people in the middle. And you get people who are not necessarily all that enthused, but they will vote for it for various reasons. I'm saying even if you get the percentage of people that are towards the edges of it, that is still a win. You lose nothing by doing so. The attacks on Uyghurs seems more emotional to me, as opposed to having any real political outcome in regards to what he's doing for the negative. How do you lose in that context? Yes, you go on a show. And yes, you have a conversation about your ideas and about the things that you believe in. And your hope is a percentage of these people are now open to me, or at the very least will be open to me if I continue to do this. That's your want. How's it a loss? Is the part I don't get. I don't get how it's legitimizing a certain group if indeed you haven't necessarily changed your own ideas and your own thoughts. What you're trying to do is actually put those thoughts into a different space in order to get people of that space to allow an openness to those ideas. That seems to be a good thing. Seems to be a good thing. I don't think it's politically irrelevant. Yes, I don't. So many other people can be reaching right here. So many other people we can be reaching. Again, I don't deny that. But why carve it up? So you had what, 150 million people. That's like 200 million people voted, give or take. I don't think that's right. I think you got like 49% or 50% voted. So you get like 49%, 48% of people who didn't vote. That's astonishing by itself, right? That you get that many people who say, screw it, I don't see the point. So yes, you should be trying to reach and get those numbers. But from the standpoint of people who are politically active, who go vote, who push for a particular candidate, why wouldn't you also be trying to get those people? That's the part I don't get. Why not try to get people who are on the other side while also trying to get the people in the middle? Because again, what are you doing special to get the people in the middle short of what you've always been doing? And if you got this situation where 50% of the people don't vote year after year after year after year, then those people seem to be a harder get than the people who actually do vote, who may be open to your point of view. I mean, again, I would imagine the left is similar to the right. You'd have elements of people who believe all of it. Those people are ungettable. And there are going to be some people who believe some of it and edge up on this kind of 49-51 thing of voting for one party or the other based on some factor. Those people actually may be gettable. And again, I don't see the negative in it. I don't see the negative in it. Cenk is on the we are the world bullshit. More entertainment. Maybe. But is it wrong? But is it wrong? Shouldn't we be the world, right? The lie is different at every level. Maggie Smith, again, fair enough. I accept that. What is this? Nationalist conservatives may sound racist, whether they're black, white, or Hispanic. They like favorite. What? They like to favorite their groups, which they can relate to better. Tyrone Chapman. Fair enough. Jake is fighting for himself. Oh man, that is the most cynical interpretation. And I don't buy it. I don't buy it. Call me naive, call me whatever you want. I don't necessarily buy it. Midas, Welcome to the family, Midas. Welcome to the family. Welcome to the family, man. Thank you. Sophie Martinez. Jamal is the real deal. Cenk is grifting. Sophia Martinez. Okay. Let's take the most cynical interpretation. Kamala Harris lost the race. She gets crushed. It's humiliating. James Carville says, I don't know what happened. I'm reaching in the dark looking for an answer. Cenk looks at this and says, we are going to be dealing with MAGA heaven for the next 4 years. And so our network needs to reposition ourselves to try to, at the very least, reach some of those MAGA voters to see if we can pull some of them in. Because obviously, this kind of lefty authoritarianism isn't working for us, or for that matter, in the country, meaning we can't win elections with this kind of lefty authoritarianism. So we at TYT, myself, Anna, we aren't going to change our point of view. We're not going to change our views. We're not going to alter any of that by any way. But we will go on interviews on these right-wing networks, and we will have conversations with these right-wing networks in order to get more views and, ideally, more members of the TYT family, or whatever they call it now. Let's say that's true. So what? Like, you must understand my point. From my point of view, a podcaster doing political content, it's not just putting out ideas. They want those ideas to go somewhere. At least I think they do. At least I do. And if you are ostensibly on the left, let's say like TYT is, and his objective is, I want more people in this kind of lefty tent. And more people in the lefty tent means more viewers for my audience. That's a rational act. And within the context of that rational act, he's also reaching more people and making inroads into what is considered MAGA now. How is that a bad thing? Again, from my point of view, all of this talk about you're legitimizing these platforms is nonsense. They feel some kind of way about Uygur pulling out of the cult. That's more than anything else. In their mind, yes, they think of it that way. You're giving legitimacy to these people by talking to these people. But this is the same argument that lefties were using of why Trump couldn't talk to Kim Jong-un, or whether Joe Biden shouldn't talk to Vladimir Putin. I mean, this stuff is nonsense. His objective is not to reach the host. You're never going to reach the host. His objective is not to reach the cast of some particular show. You're never going to do that. The objective is, are there anybody in the audience of some of these people that agree with me? And if they agree with me on one point, is it possible that they will be open to agreeing with me on another point? Meaning, if I can get 5 or 10%, that is a better thing for me. Meaning taking the most cynical interpretation. But it also means that that's 5 and 10% that are now open to lefty ideas. So if we're having a conversation about paid family leave and they agree with it, that's a win. If we're having a conversation about ensuring that everyone gets health care, again, that's a win. Like I'm saying that this is not necessarily a negative in the sense, it's not like a lefty is going to look at it and be like, I am now turning to the right wing because Cenk Uygur went on this particular podcast. I don't buy that at all. If we're going to go with this notion that there are 50% of the public that doesn't vote, that may fall either side, that 50% may also be paying attention to that network. And the only thing that they get is right-wing talking points that are often nonsense. Even if the most cynical point of view, I don't care. I don't see how he's wrong. From a business sense, or for that matter, from a political sense, I don't see how he's wrong. Let's keep going. Trump, every time he opens his mouth, Mark, yes, he does. Nowadays, the North, cocktacky, I don't know what that means. Roger Stone is an interesting guy. Yes, I agree with you. Drew Magnus, we've been watching Cenk for like 10 years. He always charging changing his stance. Is he? You have to give me. Look, again, to be honest, I haven't watched Cenk Uygur in decades, like a decade. So if he has, put it down. Fair enough. He seemed to have been. Look, the last I saw Cenk, he was talking about fighting the establishment. That seems to be the theme of his argument, even when he's talking about to right left wing audience. Is fighting the establishment purely a left wing thing? It doesn't have to be. And if you're talking about these kind of populist right wingers, okay, what does it mean to even be a populist right winger? And does it fit within the context of a typical normal Republican Party? Because the Republican Party doesn't seem to think so. And I don't mean, again, I don't mean the politicians, and I don't mean these media hacks that push either on Fox News or OAN or whatever it's called. I'm talking about regular human beings who are watching this stuff, consuming this stuff, and coming to various conclusions about what they agree with or what they disagree with. The people who actually go and vote, the people who actually put people in office. That's who I'm talking about. A theme that runs through him seems to be we're fighting the establishment. And perhaps doing so, we require more people than what this kind of purist ideological left allows. But it's just my point of view. I don't think the people who voted for Obama and then Trump aren't particularly ideological. I'm talking about the true MAGA believers. Yeah, but that's slicing the baby. You can't have it both ways. Meaning, is there a difference between somebody who voted for Trump versus somebody who's a MAGA person? To me, those things are the same. They're one to one. I mean, you can start slicing them up. But if indeed you slice them up, you make my point, that not all of them are the same. That some are open in ways that others are not. Yeah, I agree with that. Fair enough. All of them are not the same. So you agree with my point. That in any kind of political process, just like on the left, you have the Joe Manchins, you have the ALCs, you have the Cory Bushes, you have add your other person in there. Your Rand Pauls, your Massies of the world, meaning you have people within the context of a political spectrum in all political spectrums. And even in the context of MAGA, you would have a segment of them that are hardcore. You're never going to change them. They will go to their grave backing Donald Trump and Republican policy in general. But the fact that you accept that there was a percentage of those people who voted for Obama that are not hardcore MAGA, you kind of make my point. That those things are not necessarily one monolith. That there are segments of that are gettable. That believe they're on the right. That may not exactly be on the right. Especially when they start to hear economic populist message that they never hear from the Democratic Party and that they have never heard from the Republican Party. You make my point. Let's keep going. Like I told you, I would do this. I would take your shit you throw at me. I could be wrong. Maggie Smith, Democrats mostly don't care about that. Don't care about values. They just want to appear like they do. A member of the moral crowd. Yes, they virtue signal. Maggie, they do. They virtue signal. Agreed. But that virtue signaling has gotten to the point where it alienates everybody else. It makes them radioactive. And they don't necessarily see it. They're in a bubble. And because they think they're the moral party, they remain in that bubble. Most Americans are not so ideologically pure where they accept the stuff that is coming out of the Democratic Party. And I understand the trans kids wasn't the thing that the Democratic Party was pushing in mass, but they're not pushing anything. And so anything that comes up can take priority over everything else because they're not necessarily representing anything. If somebody said to you, hey, what does MAGA represent? I would say, well, they want to make America great again, slightly racist. I mean, whether you're going back to the 40s or whether you're going back to slavery. But ultimately, there's a body of ideas that go with this idea of America first. It's contextualized. It's understood. What does the Democratic Party stand for? I have no answer for that question. I have no answer for that question. And therein lies the problem. That answer can be subsumed, can be put on the party in a way that they may not necessarily like. And so Harris ends up defending inmates getting surgery in jail, which, again, was not necessarily something that she was running on as a platform. But if you don't stand for anything, then what you stand for can be put on you, in a sense. It's problematic. American Django, I did not vote. I voted for Jill Stein. In DC's election, they didn't allow you to. Jill Stein wasn't on the ballot, so I wrote her in. I couldn't support a party that was backing genocide. But again, that's kind of my point, right? Like, they ran around the country defending a genocide. She ran around the country with Liz Cheney, a Republican who dad is Dick Cheney, who these two are effectively a one-to-one. And this fully abandoned the left. Meaning, from the standpoint of lefties, from the standpoint of people who were pushing or trying to push her towards the left, they were abandoned. She went with Liz Cheney. Transnational gangs was one of the other high points of it. She goes to the border because she was the border czar, and the border, of course, was a complete calamity. And she tried to make it as if that I'm going to now be a hard ass on the border, despite the fact I was a border czar. I'm still in office right now. Meaning, it was a shit show of a campaign. And yet, you get Democrats saying she ran a flawless campaign. And the only reason she lost is because people were sexist, racist, and bigoted. Meaning, under no circumstances can they come to some kind of analysis of how she lost the race. And instead, we're just going to keep ticking as we are. No changes need to be made at all. It's outrageous. It's outrageous. They should be, upset with the party over that nonsense. Let's see, right here. With all due respect, Uygur is not in the left, and not, nor are those who think that he is. Okay to allow for minors to get sex change. What passes for the left in our society is defined as liberals. Agreed. Agreed. And I've been saying that for God knows how long. That this notion of what's the left, like this kind of economic populism, workers, healthcare, education, expansion of Social Security, like these policies that are on the left, increase in minimum wage, workers' rights, unions, those type of things, got completely subsumed with this idea of civil rights. And somehow those two things fused with one another, where Democrats would slice off the economic part and go with this other part. Now, yeah, you should fight like hell for civil rights, but the things that they were fighting for was on the outskirts of what Americans agreed with. And so you get this kind of weird thing where they decided we're going to talk about Martin Luther King as a civil rights leader as opposed to a socialist, which is what he was. And I would argue the strong suit of what he was. They've done this. This is kind of a liberal trick. It's the same reason that Kamala Harris chose to run around the country with Liz Cheney. This idea that we can carve off the left because the left wants stuff that we don't necessarily want to provide, and it's a pain in our ass to have to deal with. The Democratic Party, when you get $1.5 billion, how do you get that money? How do you get $1.5 billion? You get $1.5 billion by catering to people who can give you $1.5 billion. And it just so happened that those people don't need health care, they don't need education, they don't want a minimum wage increase, they don't want to increase Social Security, they don't want to do anything that cuts down the amount of money that they have at their disposal. Democrats know that, and Democrats run a campaign towards that. And if you also have to cater to the left, because you can't get elected without them, okay, well, now you have a contradiction. How do you have both of these things in your party? There was a reason that Sanders ran a campaign where he was focusing on getting money from everybody else. And most of those things were basically like under $20 or something like that. I think $22 was the average. Because you couldn't run a campaign in the way that the Democratic Party runs their campaigns by advocating those policies. Just can't do it. And so if they can carve off the left by using Cheney to do so, Republicans who don't necessarily want to vote for Donald Trump, then they would do that. And she tried to do that. And she failed in doing that. But you must understand the trick that they use, that liberals use, is civil rights, civil rights, civil rights, and ignore real world phenomena of what people go through on a daily basis in an economic sense. Carmen, agreed. Agreed. That said, is he wrong for trying to reach out? My argument isn't Cenk Uygur is a beautiful person. I don't know what he is. My argument is that his attempt to reach out to elements that are on the right, the gettable, whatever that percentage is not wrong. And that the reaction by progressives as they flip out over him doing that is part of the problem that he is articulating in him reaching out to the right. Like, again, when Sanders goes on Fox News, God bless Bernie Sanders for doing so. He's given his message to an audience that wouldn't necessarily hear that message. When the Teamsters goes to the RNC rally, again, God bless. He's getting his message to an audience that wouldn't necessarily hear that message. When Uygur goes on these other networks, they flip out. Well, Kamala Harris was going to go on Joe Rogan, and her team backed away because Joe Rogan is too edgy. He's too much on the right. He's a hardcore MAGA guy. Joe Rogan voted for Bernie Sanders. For fuck's sake. They take that point of view where they sit in a bubble, isolated in their moral correctness. And I'm saying it is utterly ridiculous to do that. My show reaches on the left and the right. Whether I agree with them or not is secondary to the point. I'm willing to have the argument with them, and I'm willing to have the conversation with them, because they're not wrong across the board. It was the left that was pushing for the Ukraine war. It was the left that shouted down the few people in Congress that came out with a letter saying, hey, we should work towards peace. Shut up. In which case they retracted the letter. I'm pointing out that lefties have had wrong policies. And it's shocking to me that they stand in this notion of moral correctness as they get hundreds of thousands of people killed in the course of a few years. They were wrong. I think the trans thing is wrong. If you want to say he's a liberal, okay, whatever. I'm just pointing out that the objective of trying to get more people in your tent is correct. I think it's correct. I get this video is risque. I get it's risque. And I say that because I know you guys hate Uygur. But again, this is not about Uygur. Right here. What's entertainment? I hear you, JT. One love, always appreciate your perspective, even if we, after a few issues, keep building your empire. Right. Look, you don't have to agree with me. This is not a sound, this is not an echo chamber. I know I put out stuff that you guys disagree with. R.W. Isaac, Jamal is right to agree with Cenk's criticism of the left's closed-minded mentality. Yes, but others here are right to question Cenk's integrity given his record. Just my thoughts. Fair enough. You're an honest man, R.W. Isaac. I accept that. I accept that. I don't know what's in his heart. I don't. I have zero idea what's in Cenk Uygur's heart. Considering the weight gain, probably a lot of, clogged arteries. That to the side. Is he right or wrong for trying to expand his base and put out lefty ideas in areas where they would typically be hostile and they typically don't get? I don't think so. I mean, half of Twitter at this point is 50-50. What people will call Democrats versus what people call Republicans. A percentage of the Democrat side will be lefties. Ideas that you can put out where a group that would normally, typically get those ideas, how is that bad? I guess from my point of view, if I never hear your point of view, my point of view can never change. It's simple as that. And it's easy to throw away people saying, well, all of those people are racist and sexist. Again, I don't buy that. There's a percentage of those people that are gettable. Why would you try to get them? If you want to say that he's doing this for grifting reasons, okay, fair enough. But even with the worst cynical interpretations of it, is it by definition him having a political show, putting out political ideas as his product? Are you not bringing political ideas that are typically and commonly held on the left into right wing circles? And if you are putting those ideas in the right wing circles, will there be a percentage that agree? And flip that. If you don't do that, how would that percentage ever get the chance to ever even hear those ideas to agree in the first place? Whether it's a grift or not, I think it equals to the same thing. I don't see it as wrong. All right, let's go 5 more minutes. As I said, I will sit here and I would take the shit that you guys give me on this. America doesn't have any more class solidarity. That's true. I find myself arguing with the left that H-1B1 visas are bad, arguing with the right that American culture and education is sufficient. Yes! Yes! Tyrone Chapman, yes. Yes. Like I said in my video, like, the Democrats are reflexive. Like, and I hate this. This is what, and this kind of goes with the Cenk thing. People often ideologically silo. And in doing so, any idea that is coming out of somebody you don't like, your silo harms. We're not going to accept that idea. That idea is bad. That is a horrible thing because it came from that person's mouth that I don't particularly like, and that person is racist, sexist, bigoted. And because he's racist, sexist, and bigoted, I cannot accept that argument. Okay, but what if he's actually right? What if there are wolves at the door? Right? And what I mean by that is the H-1B1 visa thing is a really good example. Just because it's coming out of the mouth of somebody like Steve Bannon or Donald Trump or MAGA doesn't mean by definition it's wrong. Corporations have a tendency to abuse anything where they can maximize their profit on, whether that's dumping stuff in our water, in our air. We make laws against that because they do it if they can do it to maximize their profit. Okay, why do we expect, immigration? One of the big issues with immigration is people were coming across the border. We don't like the fact that people come across the border. And in doing so, we had corporations that were effectively using that labor who can drive down costs, as opposed to hiring Americans to do the job. That's assuming you can get Americans to do a job at the price point. Why would it be different with H-1B1 visas when you can pay those people less and treat them differently than Americans? I mean, even corporations, when they offshore jobs, why are they offshoring jobs? They're doing so because they can maximize their profit. They can ship that stuff still back here in the United States to sell it while paying whatever that person is offshore much less than an American worker. They do it because they can maximize their profit. If the left doesn't get that, then they're making a pro-corporate argument. Full stop. On the other side of it, you may have a gap in the number of people that can suit or fit certain jobs that are Americans. And if you indeed have a gap, you need to fill that gap. In which case, the H-1B1 thing, great. Fills the need. By the same token, if you are MAGA, and your objective is to fill those jobs with Americans, you cannot simultaneously tell me that you want to get rid of the Department of Education. You can't. They don't make sense. It's a magical thing. I don't get it. I agree with you, Tyrone. I agree with you thoroughly. Right here. Here's another one. Cenk always hears people back to the Democrat Party, hurts people back to the Democratic Party. His criticism of the Democratic Party is very superficial. He ultimately endorses the establishment. Yes and no. Well, yes. 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 Agreed. Agreed. Yeah, agreed. I guess, my argument is not for Cenk, personally. It's, and I guess I'm trying to cut this finely, but it's true. Do I believe that this argument of trying to bring more people into your tent is correct or wrong? I think it's correct. That is what he's trying to do. Whether that is hurting people to Democrats, whether that's hurting people to TYT for viewership, whether that's wherever he's trying to hurt people. I'm saying it's a rational act for a person in his business to get more people on his side. And it just so happened that his side is political. Um, I chafe at this idea that they always sheepdog people to the Democratic Party. Him, Sam Cedar, Packman, et cetera, et cetera. Name your Democratic adjacent podcasts. Agreed. Agreed. I've done plenty of videos on it. But there's a secondary point to that, that Uygur is articulating left-wing ideas. I'm not going to agree with all of them, but he will articulate many. And if he is doing that, and if he is reaching people who typically can't be reached because there's no outreach to those people, then how is it a negative thing, considering that there may be more people who are inclined to those body of ideas? Again, I'm not talking about Democratic Party stuff. I'm just talking about left-wing ideas that we would typically agree with. Why is it wrong to evangelize, evangelize? I may be getting the pronunciation wrong or conjugation wrong. But to go to those people and present those ideas in their own dwellings. It's like a preacher knocking at the door in random houses. I don't see how that's wrong. I think the reaction is overwrought. I think the lefties who are freaking out kind of makes the point that he's trying to make about these people being cultists and the way that they act, as opposed to acknowledging, hey, maybe we can reach more. Maybe we can increase our base. Kamala Harris lost by like 8 million votes. Maybe, let's say, letting up on the cultish behavior is a better thing. Stop alienating Americans is a better thing. Censorship is somewhat of a bad thing. Meaning, I think it's, whatever I think about Cenk personally, Cenk is right, the title is wrong. The title is wrong? What do you mean? TYT of Cenk Uygur of TYT is right. What did I mess it up? Did I mess it up? Progressive outrage only proves this point. Look, this video is going to get like no views because people hate Cenk Uygur. Fair enough. Fair enough. We need an economic, left, social, moderate, conservative party. I don't know what that means. I think I know what you mean by the economic left. I think I get that part. You're talking about pro-worker, pro-union, increase of minimum wage, increase taxes on the very wealthy. Yeah, fair enough. I don't know what this moderate, conservative social part means. Right here. The Democrats lost me for good, and they said, when they pushed for drag queen story hour and castrating people for gender affirming care. Yeah, man, that's what I mean, right? Yeah, that's what I mean. I agree. I agree. I agree. Like I said, I voted for Jill Stein. I haven't voted for Democrats since Obama. I was, the way they treated Sanders lost me forever. They would have my hatred forever because of that. It entirely, because their argument in many respects always boiled down to, we're in it together. It's just so happened that we're in a stronger position, meaning third way Democrats. And so it's a group effort. You're going to vote for us. You have nowhere else to go, but we're still working towards very similar ends. And then when Sanders runs, and he is clearly the dominant political force, meaning he is the only person with a coalition. He's the only person with a message. They do everything in their power to cheat Sanders, which subverts the political process in a way where I'm like, okay, we're not in it together. If it's somebody who actually want for their ideas and you don't agree with it, you're going to do everything in your power to not function within the normal political system. You're just going to cheat. I'm done. I'm done. That's where I was. That's where I remain. They've lost me forever. They've lost me forever after that nonsense. And you know what's wild about it? One of the people made the point, I think it was Chris Matthews. He said, if How did he say it? He says if Sanders wins it, he's going to take it for a generation. So it's better to let Trump win. It's better to let Trump win. Just outrageous. Just outrageous. All right. I'm going to end this. Jamal, right here. Jamal, check out the new senator for West Virginia. It's going to be great material for the show. I will do that, Maggie Smith. I will do that. Oh, do we have another one? What's this one? R.W. Isaac. I just think we need neutrality party. All other issues should be open to candidate in question. I seriously think that should work. You know, somebody told me once, they said, most Americans, there are like 3 or 4 things that most Americans agree on, and we should push for those things. But instead, those things are never really put up to even have a conversation over. So if you're talking about like healthcare, if you talk about education, if you talk about time off after pregnancy, if you talk about, like, there are a few issues where you can get a majority of Americans to agree on a position. It may not be a maximalist position for the left. It may not be Medicare for all, but it may be a public option. It may not be free college, but it may be free public college, meaning there is a cut of issues that whether you're on the left or the right, you fully agree upon, where you get an overwhelming majority to back you. Those are never brought up. Those are never talked about. Nobody ever runs on those. Those are never pushed. And they never push because the reality of it is the Democratic Party is paid for by the same people who pay for the Republican Party. These are different flavors of ice cream. 2 wings of the same bird. And because there are 2 wings of the same bird, yeah, there may be differences in what they do. There may be different policies that you may like or dislike, but at the end of the day, it doesn't effectively change anything. It's tweaking around the edges of a sinking ship. They're moving deck chairs on the Titanic. It's not necessarily something that is going to affect your wallet in a significant way. And therein lies the rub. For people who are pushing for one particular party or the other, kind of miss the point that the various issues that people could agree upon, where you could bring people together on in order to get accomplished in one thrust, they just don't do. It's not in their interest to do. They don't necessarily want to take the haul, and more so than not take the haul, they would never get $1.5 billion to do it. I don't know what a neutrality party is because, this stuff is always subjective. There is no neutral. There is any, if I say I'm against rape, okay, that's a political point of view depending upon the country that I'm living in. We just all agree, so it just seems normal. But it's still a take. It's still a point of view. It's not neutral in the way that it's taken out. If I say I believe in Medicare for all, okay, again, that's not neutral. That's me very clear in an ideological sense of what I think we should have healthcare. I don't care what you call it. Every American should be covered, full stop. And it shouldn't be the situation where people get tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt on their backs for getting cancer or for getting sick. It's not like that in other countries, meaning other countries have found a way to deal with that reality. Why can't we? We just decided that this is a great way. You got cancer, pay me. You got cancer, I'm about to get rich. It's that. That's disgusting. It's our policy. It's the way we operate our medical system. And the same thing with colleges, putting $70,000 of debt on a child. I don't think that's a neutral position to say that that shouldn't happen. There should obviously be a political solution for such a thing. So neutral, I don't know. I don't know how that works. I know what you're saying when you mean it. It's because we effectively agree on a lot of stuff from our point of view. This is a neutral position. But the moment that you get out of between us, it becomes non-neutral. But R.W. Isaac, thank you. You support the show, man. You support the show. Midas, also, man, thank you. Welcome to the family, as I said once before. Look, man, I know a lot of you would disagree with me on this. I know how you feel about Cenk. I ask you to put that to the side for the moment and analyze the issue for what the issue is. Call it Bob Todd. It says Bob Todd. And Bob Todd is a podcaster. And Bob Todd, let's be neutral towards him, is on the left or considers himself on the left and wants to make inroads to the right by going on podcasts and by going to different places that the right may be. and have interviews and talk to the left, to the right, in order to explain his framing, his point of view, his ideological ideas in regards to policy to an audience that has never heard that point of view before. And the same way that Sanders went to Fox News, in the same way that the Teamsters guy, head of the Teamsters, went to the Republican National Convention. I think it was the Republican National Convention. It might have been CPAC, but I think it was the RNC convention. In all of those cases, ideas that are typically not espoused, not heard for the first time, get added to their thought process. You may get a majority that disagree, but you would also get a segment of them that, if not necessarily agree, become more open to hearing those ideas. How is expanding your reach, even if it's by 5%, wrong? If you think Bob Todd is grifting, fair enough. But what Bob Todd is grifting is not changing his own point of view. But what he is doing is trying to introduce that point of view to people who don't necessarily get that point of view. How is that wrong? You can say that Bob Todd is legitimizing those platforms. I don't believe for a moment that somebody on the left sees him on one of those shows and says, well, now those shows are legitimate. Those shows are great. I don't get that. I don't buy that. I don't buy that in the least. What I do buy is the attempt to reach out and try to pull people to your side. When Sanders did it, and you got all of these Democrats complaining that Sanders did it, my thought was, you're out of your goddamn minds. It is a good idea for him to go out there. Those people are hearing for the first time a hardcore, at least in American standards, unabashed lefty perspective. Again, in American context, that they may have never heard before. And at the end of that, I think it was like 70% of those people said, yes, we agree. Fox News was stunned. Yes, we agree. When you get certain lefty policies that were put to people for the Fox News audience, and the Fox News audience agreed with it, I forget the exact policy, but they came out with like a massive agreement, and Fox News hosts were just shocked by the whole thing. They don't get to hear the argument. Typically, they are in a bubble every bit as much as progressive left is in a bubble. And it's time that the bubble gets popped. They use these tribal fights and arguments as a way to keep people from actually focusing on the actual establishment itself. And by establishment, I mean the established order that Democrats and Republicans agree upon that allows our system to be the way our system is, the one that they hate so much, where they believe that these people on the left and right are not working in their best interests. They fight each other, or we fight each other, as opposed to going after Washington itself. How is that wrong? How is that wrong? Now, I know the culture's left is having a hissy fit over this, but the reality of it is, I think he's right. And you have plenty of people who just hate Cenk Uygur who are just going to trash him because of it. This is not really about Uygur. And as I said before, I would argue that this show does something similar in regards to bringing on the people on the right and people on the left to have the conversations that we all have about the issues that are bubbling up. I find myself doing the same thing. And so when I see Uygur doing that, whether it's a grift, whether it's an earnest, if it's a grift, he's grifting political ideas. Those political ideas are typically what's considered to be on the left. I look at it and think to myself, how's it wrong? And the fact that the left is flipping out the way that they are is a bit strange. Are you telling me that these people are such purists that having an alternate point of view or different point of view is somehow disallowed? I would argue that's part of the problem. These are the same people who took issue with Sanders going on the show or on Fox. Or the same people that took issue with Kamala Harris going on Joe Rogan because Joe Rogan is a racist and a sexist and a bigot and all of this other stuff. Joe Rogan is just the guy. He's just the guy. He's just like an everyman. And the same issue that I have with Joe Rogan as an everyman is the same issue that I would say Americans on some level have with them, because what they do is alienate the rest of America because most Americans are not that ideologically pure. So I will end it on this. I know a lot of you saying it's a grift. It's a grift. Fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. I will get extreme disagreement on this. This is not a sound chamber or echo chamber, so I don't have the expectation that everybody's going to agree with me. But if you take, for the moment, your thoughts of Uygur out of it, meaning whatever you think of him, take it out of it for the moment, and evaluate it for what it is. This guy is trying to expand his reach. His reach just so happened to be on issues of lefty stuff. Even though he's a sheepdog to the Democratic Party, fair enough, I agree. But he's trying to expand his reach. And in the context of expanding his reach, pull more people over to the side, or at the very least being more open to what is considered to be lefty thought, or at the very least be open to it in a way that they're not now because they've never even get the message. Is it wrong for a person to do that? I don't think so. Right here. Cenk Uygur is the same person who said Julian Assange was a delusional puppet. Again, this is not an argument for Cenk Uygur. I mean, I guess it is, but it's not in the way of defending Uygur and the things that he's done over his career. I'm being very specific in this argument. Is it wrong for a guy to try to expand his reach into what is considered to be the opposition and introduce that opposition to elements of his own ideas that just so happen to often land what we would consider to be on the left? I don't think it is. Look, you could tell me Cenk Uygur committed murder. I would say the exact same thing. That's not really what I'm defending. I'm defending something very specific. And again, I think I'm defending it because I do the same thing, even though I do it differently. What he is attempting to do is expand and open the bubble. And it seems that what the left is trying to do, and they're freaking out over him trying to do so. All right, I ended on this. I ended on that. I am going to say like, I'm going to say share, I'm going to say subscribe. Look, my point in this video was only a conversation. It was just a conversation. I've been watching this. I don't feel like I'm a progressive. I feel like they've kind of left me in some respects, or at the very least, I feel like I'm in my own space. I cover international news, I guess, a lot more than any of those other channels do that consider themselves on the left. And so I don't necessarily feel like I'm there, especially after the Ukraine war, where all of them were pushing for war. But by the same token, I've watched what has been taking place as that stuff pops up in my Twitter feed. And I'm not necessarily shocked by the reaction of the culture left, but the amount of ire that's been aimed at people who would ostensibly like Uygur. I'm not even talking about my audience. I'm talking about people who, like the Cedars of the world, the Pacmans of the world, the Evangelizing of the world, like the people who are in that lefty echo chamber, the Democratic appendage left echo chamber, where Uygur was a fixture, that they have gone after him with full weapons drawn. And as he makes the point of you guys are in a bubble, they kind of reinvigorate the point that they are in a bubble. So, what's this last one? Rachel the Great. You will get the last one, Rachel. With you playing on each morning run, with you playing in each morning's run, absolute therapy during those times. Okay. Fair enough, Rachel. Fair enough. All right, here's another one. Oh, I can't pronounce your name, bro. I just say SSS. Assess Humaru. Thirst. On the people who are in the chamber with Cenk, many of whom TYT produced. Yes, that is very true. That is very true. I was referring to your times at RT Jamal, and it's Razel. Razel, thank you. I appreciate that, Razel. Oh, morning run. Yeah. I was never at RT. I was at Sputnik. Fair enough. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I discovered you back in 2021. Did you? Badass. Badass. Good day from Sydney, mates. Homosexuality destroys society every single time. Jin Ho, I'd greatly disagree with you, bro. Look, from my point of view, people can live the life that they want to live. God bless them. In every society, when that society gets some level of affluence, birth rates go down. I don't believe for a moment that homosexuality is the reason for those birth rates going down. So yeah, I disagree. But God bless you. It's your opinion. You can have it. It's none of my business. One way or the other, it's your take. And by the way, notice how I did that. I didn't go into a screeching rage. I didn't scream that the guy was a horrible person to do any of that nonsense. You can just disagree. People have their points of view. People have their points of view. All right, I'm going to end this. By the way, Jinho, thank you for watching. I've seen you before on the show, and I really do appreciate you watching. And Sydney is a beautiful place. He said, we'll find out. I hope not. I hope not. It's like the last man says, Jinho was right. Jinho was right. Sydney is a beautiful country, man. I had the opportunity to visit. I went. I had just lost my job at a company doing software. I was got fired when I was in the hospital. And my ex at the time had a job it was a company in Sydney that a company from America sent it to. And so I was going to do a surprise visit to visit her. Now, this relationship was not going well. So there's that. And I go to visit her. A few days go okay. But then the typical reality of that relationship not necessarily being the best kicks in. We go to I would never forget it. We went to see There Will Be Blood. Damn good movie, by the way. Or at least well acted. And Sydney had this massive theater, or in Australia, this massive theater, like the size of a building. We watch it and we go walking back to get to like the bus. And her and I get into this screaming argument. I can count on one hand the number of screaming arguments I've had in my life. Maybe two, I think. Two arguments. And it becomes horrible. Like it's horrible. Like when you're walking on the street, A, you're black. B, you're in a foreign country. And C, you are having a scene in the middle of nowhere as you're walking to a bus stop. It was not a good day. That was a horrible night. Yeah, it was not a good day. It was not a good day. But Sydney was beautiful. Sydney was beautiful. All right, I'm going to take a break. I have a show first thing in the morning. Oh, I have somebody who agrees with me. I'm going to end it on agreement. 100% with you, Jamal. The identity consciousness movement wing of the progressive ruin that table. What is that? Ruin that label. Yes. Yes. I feel like it left me. It felt so cultish. And it wasn't even populist, like economic populist. It became identity. It's almost like they fuse everything in identity. And mind you, they didn't do that for no reason. They did it because it's easier to make an argument for identity when you're trying to get money, a $1.5 billion for a race. Meaning, if I go to a billionaire and say, hey, I need $1.5 billion for education, healthcare. I want to increase Social Security. They're going to say, get out of my room, get out of my house, leave. They're not going to accept those things because they already have those things. It's a vested interest argument. And so it's far easier to push identity, push it, full barrel, because there's no money lost in doing that. There's no money lost in doing that. I could go to get $1.5 billion because I'm going to push identity, and then in no way going to hurt their ability to make additional cash, and in no way going to assist the workers of this country. They did it on purpose. They did it on purpose. I mean, for example, the reaching out to moderate Republicans. That Kamala Harris did with Liz Cheney. She did it in order to marginalize the left. The left wants all of this stuff. If I can get moderate Republicans to join my team, then I can replace moderate Republicans with lefties. And then I don't have to listen to them any more than I listen to them now. In fact, I have to listen to them even less. Agreed. Agreed. All right, I am going to take a break. I will see you guys bright and early. Jesus, 12 in the morning. All right. I will see you guys first thing in the morning. You guys are phenomenal. Whether you agree with me or not, I hope we can have these disagreements without any insane stuff. It's like 10,000 people unsubbed. I hope it's not that bad. But I have been watching this from the wings, and give me your take. Either agree, disagree, somewhere between. Put it in the comments below. I do read the comments. In fact, I even learn from the comments. You guys put informative stuff in those comments. It's my audience, and I appreciate you guys for it. It's funny. I see some people. I remember I've watched channels because I think channels are reflection. The audience are reflections of the channel. I tend to think that. And each channel is like its own world. And in the context of his own world, you would go to one channel, it may be calm, another channel, they may be screaming at the audience, another channel, they're playing video games. Like, they're their own little self-contained world. And the people who they bring on those channels tend to be reflective of the hosts in some way. Some of those audience or comments channels are horrible. Like like the people and the things that they say, it's just fucking outrageous. I won't be calling you names tomorrow. You can call me names. People call me names all the time. You can call me names. All right, I'm going to end this. I'm going to say like, share, subscribe. This one is gone for a very long time. We're an hour and 20 minutes. I haven't had a talking to the audience video in a while, and I thought this would be a pretty good topic to do so. Have a good one, guys. I see you bright and early in the morning. Wait a minute, did I miss somebody? I missed somebody. R.W. Isaac. Oh, I mean neutrality regards to foreign policy, that neutral on all issues, including foreign policy. I should have been clear. R.W. Isaac. Yes. Look, I have no issue with us going for American interests. It's just, I don't think it's American interest to start wars abroad, to overthrow governments, to, this stuff is just outlandish. We should be able to engage with countries. Like, for example, J.D. Vance one time made the statement that China goes into places and builds bridges, dams, roads, etc. We go and build military bases. Now, if you're a country, which one do you want to be inside your country? The U.S. or China in that regard? Well, obviously, you want the country that's going to build stuff, that's going to make your country better, that's going to build infrastructure, to make your lives easier. It's a win-win relationship, as opposed to this extractive relationship that we have with our vassals. We are eating Europe alive right now for our own self-interest. That is not an ideal foreign policy. And the way that we've engaged has created a system where the rest of the world is against the United States. I mean, BRICS is the epitome of that. It is effectively, BRICS is the culmination of all of the ire and resentment that is built up around the world at the way the United States act in material form. That's what it is. If we had a different foreign policy with those countries, BRICS wouldn't exist. It's that simple. Thank you, IW. Whoa, Isaac, thank you, man. I just see the overwhelming amount of libertarians and socialists who agree on mutual opposition to the Western foreign policy. Yes, that's the other part. It was Trump that came out and made a deal with North Korea. It was Trump that pulled those troops out of Syria. Yes, he stole the oil, I get it. But he's the one that killed Obama's regime change program in that country. And yes, Trump is responsible on some level for Syria falling, but I'm just making the point that he killed the program. It was Trump that pointed out we need to end that war with Russia. Now, whether he does it or not, I have no idea. He has criticized some of the moves Joe Biden made, but all things being equal, he's filled his people with vultures. And what about Israel and Palestine? Yes, he's going to be pro-Israel to the hilt in a ridiculous way. That is true. But between Democrats and Republicans, he seemed to be more open to making deals as opposed to having these wars. And so it's not shocking that people who are anti-imperialists look at the Republican Party as a better option as opposed to the Democratic Party. I didn't vote for Kamala Harris. I thought Joe Biden was one of the worst presidents we've ever had, ever. And I say that, a lot of which comes from his foreign policy and how that's adversely affected Americans and American allies abroad. So yeah, I agree with you on that. Neutral is hard though. But let's keep going. It says, but get bagged down in economic debates while the war machine and both parties remain in full control. We spend $1 trillion a year, roughly $1 trillion a year on our military. That is an astonishing amount of money to spend. I think half of that goes towards wages and pay and everything else, but that is still an astronomical amount of money to spend. And many of those programs are in the black. So there's a question really of how much bang for the buck are you getting for the money that you're spending. Meaning, you can look at the Chinese military budget and you can say, okay, well, they spend what, 300 trillion, give or 300 billion, give or take. China just came out with a sixth generation jet that can fly in space. Russia is building hypersonic missiles. And as I'm unaware of the US even having hypersonic missiles, despite the money that it spends, we spend more on healthcare, and yet we have what, like 10 years less life than European nations that are supposedly equal into the United States. There's a problem with this. There's a problem with this. In fact, look at this. Under Joe Biden, and let's be honest, it's not just Joe Biden, homelessness in America has gone up, I believe, 20%. 12%, I'm sorry. Okay, 1 minute. Let me read this. United States homeless surge 18%. Okay, I was right. In 2024, according to federal officials. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development says that 770,000 people are homeless under President Joe Biden. The surge comes after 2023 saw an increase of 12%. This is what Americans are living in. It's not a third world country. This is America. That shouldn't happen. In a country this rich, that shouldn't happen. But that is happening. And you have to ask, okay, why is that happening? Why are this many people on the street? We sent $300 billion to Ukraine. Fixing a homeless thing was what, $20 billion? We couldn't spare it. We couldn't find the money anywhere. It's a percentage of what we've sent to Ukraine in regards to the war. We spent $10 trillion on Iraq. All of that's just money just gone. What do we have to show for it? Ashes in Iraq. Afghanistan was humiliating in regards to the pullout. Spent 20 years, $3 trillion, and then the Taliban take the country back. Fundamental problem in the way that we operate in this country. And that problem is in Washington, in the way that they use political means to keep people fighting each other as opposed to going at the original or the main problem. And maybe that's the theme of this entire video at its core. Whether you're on the left and the right, I can't believe for a moment that you think this is okay. I just can't. I just don't. Nobody wants their communities to look like that. Now, we can come to some reason or rationale for why they're that way. But at the very least, it should be something we're fighting over, doing something about. And I'm saying those issues never bubble up to the main thrust of public attention and opinion. If anything, we're fighting over trans toilets, or we're fighting over, I don't know, pick any random cultural issue that you want to bring up. There are issues that we all agree upon, that we can move forward on. And I don't care if there's a fight over it in regards to what's the best way to deal with it. But at the very least, let's be honest that these things are just completely unacknowledged. The left is typically the only place that this stuff is even brought up. And so if lefty ideas can get inseminated into the womb of MAGA, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I don't know why anybody on the left would be not okay with it. R.W. Isaac, thank you, man. I really appreciate it. I deeply appreciate it. You guys make this show run in real terms. Every video that I do in the morning is effectively demonetized. I've been complaining about YouTube for that for a while. And to make it even worse, YouTube deleted one of my videos that I put up criticizing YouTube for allowing child-friendly P on their platforms. So it was okay for them to play child-friendly P, but me bringing out the fact that they're allowing it is outrageous. In which case they delete the video. The reason why I was doing that video is because I was trying to point out how wild it is that content that should be age restricted is not. And understand the age restriction label by definition means that less people are going to see that video, which is by definition demonetization. That video was literally taken down within 10 minutes of me doing that video. And they said this was aiming pornography at children, when it was a criticism of YouTube allowing it to be aimed at kids. Fucking outrageous. Just outrageous. Thank you guys, all of you. And I accept your points, and I'll read the comments. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'll say so, but right now, that's my point of view. You guys have a fantastic night. I'll see you bright and early, 7 a.m. to 10 a.m., Monday through Friday, at the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. Have a good one. New member, LL Bomber. Welcome to the family, LL Bomber. Thank you, man. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Violet Quintal. Thanks for keeping it real, Jamal. I agreed with what you said, I think. Oh, thank you, Violet. I appreciate that. Here's another one. I appreciate where Cenk is going. Oh, right here. I think where Cenk is going wrong, and you could also, and you also is thinking that right populists share leftist concerns and they don't. Oh, I see. That where we're wrong on this, our point of view on this, is that the right wing in any sense shares lefty concerns. I don't buy that, man. I mean, again, you're talking about something that's not a monolith. It's like saying everybody on the left agrees with kids having trans surgeries. Okay, well, obviously they don't, right? I think everybody cares for their kids. I think everybody cares about their economic concerns. I think if you deal with those economic concerns, you win. It's that. Yeah, I think it's that. All right. I know I keep saying this. Like, share, subscribe. Okay. When Jamal says 5 minutes means 50 minutes, I know, but like I said, I want to read every I'm gonna read every super chat or new member thing, as long as it's not racist, bigoted, sexist. I'll read it. That's my rule. All right, I'll end this now. You guys have a fantastic night. I will see you bright and early in the morning. What is that? 5 hours later. Have a good one, all. Be safe.